Last week, the cute thief brought me a sacrifice. Another Onza T-Rex frame. Makes a difference from all the usual mice. I was looking to answer the question of how light can I get this frame, and after a bit of family-friendly torture, it finally spilled the beans. And please check out part 1 for more frame torture and to see how much I saved. Now the frame was compromised, I added a disco vinyl wrap to hold it all together. But now it's finally time to build it and see how much the full bike weighs. Let's get started as I normally do with the headset. This frame takes internal cups. This is my favourite style as it allows me to use this. An adapter cup that moves the bearings out the frame, leaving room for a tapered fork. Weirdly, this frame has very shallow head tube cups and I had to actually trim the cups down slightly for it to sit flush. I've never had that before. Also, this frame is slightly worn, so the cup doesn't take much effort to fit. And yeah, a headset was fitted when I got it blasted to avoid this getting worse. So, this is yet another frame that gets the stud treatment. Being able to fit a tapered fork was important, as this Clarkson carbon trials fork is the lightest fork I have, and you may have seen this on a few of my builds. For how light it is lasting pretty well. They do this in either a disc only or rim brake only version. A front rim brake would be lighter, but so would my wallet if I bought one, so a disc will have to do. Plus, I prefer how bikes ride with a disc up front. But how light is it? Almost half the weight of the fork of my previous Rex. That's a massive chunk of weight saved straight away. I am contractually obliged to mention that even if your frame takes internal cups, it's not guaranteed to accept a tapered fork with an adapter cup. In fact, this frame wasn't compatible at first. I then used my Dremel to make it compatible by grinding away the inner diameter of the head tube. This one's inner profile had a weird swoopy shape that fouled with the steerer, but wasn't structural. Even with it modified, it still only just fits. The cute thief found this stem in the Shire, and I really like it. It's made by 3T, although, give me a moment, I sense a weight saving opportunity. I'm not sure who this stem's made by, but I love the fact it looks like a tortoise's neck. I also managed to find a headset spacer in exactly the same finish as my wrapped frame. What are the chances? I might adjust the spacer situation once I've ridden the bike, but I don't want to cut the fork down as no doubt I want to use it on other frames in the future. It does look a little weird though. And the top cap must have come with the spacer. A Tratec SL carbon bar isn't only lightweight and a nice shape, I also think it has the best harmonics of any bar I've fitted. These vibrations permeate exuberantly through the bike and body, increasing balance and steeze. See what I mean? Because these bars are carbon, I add some gritty grease for extra grip. I didn't mention this earlier, but you probably noticed anyway because nothing seems to get past you folk, but this stem has backwards bolts. I'm all for making my trials bikes more aero, but this does mean my Unia Allen keys are too bulky to fit. But this is why I keep a slim set alongside them. These bolts are tedious, but they do add to the uniqueness. Sorry, don't mind me, I was just throwing this wheel together. I mentioned that I wrapped the rims in the last video, but I didn't say what they are. This is a light bicycle carbon rim, and it should do what it says in the tin. Make a light bicycle. I got that built onto an Echo hub, which, a bit like the light bicycle rim, makes my bike Echo. The rim gets taped up, and then a rubber bodysuit fitted. This suit is from Schwalbe and is known as Bonkers. Billy Bonkers. Not the softest compound tyre ever, but the sheer number of edges give more grip than you first expect. I've used this model on the front of a comp trials bike before and it worked pretty well. The tyre is light, but to save more weight, I'm going to fit this aerothan tube that weighs just 68 grams for this 26-inch size. That's nuts, well, I mean bonkers. It's such a weird tube, it feels like plastic. Now, don't they use these at sporting events or something these days? Normally I throw these together and I magically get a fitted tyre and tube, but these are a little more delicate, so I'm doing this manually. I'm such a wimp, I jumped every time. That's a seriously light bicycle wheel. I do need to weigh it down with some steel though, but I'll see how I get on with a smaller 180mm rotor to save at least a little bit of weight. Plus, these titanium rotor bolts barely even register on my hand. I'll add a dab of thread lock and get them fitted. Who says men can't multitask? That's the front done. Time to work on its rear. I had wrapped the sidewalls of this jet set rim, but I'll be grinding it later, so I cut the wrap off to avoid it getting tattered. This is a lightweight single wall rim, but notice the offset spokes though. This gives more room for holes, but actually stiffens the rim as it's supported on both sides rather than just in the middle where it may want to twist. That's a pretty nice touch. This is built onto an Oki hub, and I'll let you into a secret. The cute thief didn't actually get me a whole new bike's worth of parts. He's such a slacker. So I've had to use a couple from the heavy Onza. I will try and get those replaced and have 2 bikes rideable at some point. This also means the hub already has the 15-tooth sprocket fitted. This is steel though. Aluminium is available if I wanted to save the most weight, which I do, but that will have to wait until the cute thief puts in the effort to find one. Now, here's a bit of history for you. When I worked at Tighty Bikes, we were all about the weight saving and found out that clear parcel tape, if doubled up, made a super lightweight rim tape that was also strong enough to support the inner tube in rims with huge cutouts. I've not done the neatest job here, but I am a little out of practice. It should work fine though. Next up, my new favourite rear trials tyre, the Schwalbe Hansdampf, will be adorning the wheel. They've got a great compromise of grip, weight, protection and bounce, just like me. That said, despite the tread being pretty decent, I do like to modify it to suit my needs a little better. More on that soon. But no aerotan for the rear. I like to think I'm a smooth rider, but maybe not that smooth. Looks so cool, but maybe a little bit too much PSI. I'll leave it harder for now to stretch the tyre and rim tape so they'll be nice and settled at my chosen lower pressure. It can be pretty tricky to get these tyres to seat properly in these single-walled rims though. Even with the extra PSI, I have one spot that's not seated. I might just leave it though, as on a bike like this, it really doesn't make too much difference. I mentioned modifying this tyre earlier, and this is as good time as any to do it. I use this tool from Schwalbe/Unia as it allows me to get consistent cuts done due to its depth gauge. And with my lackluster power of editing, the tyre is modified in no time at all, if you don't class an hour as time, like I don't. Now, I won't go into full detail as to why cutting the tread like this is helpful, but if you do want to know more, please head to my recent Meta bike build where I use highly scientific methods to explain why. But the short story is, smaller knobs are stiffer and squirm less, which helps accuracy when hopping about. Leaving any innuendos behind, I'm going to lube up its bottom, bracket. And I'm going to use this, a lube tube syringe from Radar Labs. This is an advert, I guess, but I saw these on Instagram and loved the idea, so I went and bought some myself. Sometimes I just like to highlight things that I think are cool. You can open them up for easy filling and use the adjustable limiter for precise applications, or locking it up for travelling. Now, you can get similar things from China, but it's the accessories I think that make these cool, with lots of different brush or nozzle sizes for different uses. I also like the caps to keep things from getting messy and the clips for wall mounting. So yeah, I paid for these and was never actually asked to mention them, but I think these are cool and I bought a few for different uses. So lubing my bottom, brackets, has never been easier. This Tratec ISIS bracket gets the honour of being crammed in. Okay, I'll stop. Being serial, this bottom bracket from Tratek is ideal for this bike. It's nice and wide, 128mm, to clear the frame and brakes, but it's also one of the lightest steel models available. Sticking with Tratek, I have another set of the SL cranks. These are slightly newer than the ones on my last Onza though, and feature a splined freewheel and bash. This makes removing it if needed a whole load easier. Now I'm going to assume most of you know about front freewheels by now, but if Trials is new to you, then you may be surprised by this. Again, it comes down to weight. By moving the freewheel to the middle of the bike, the back wheel is lighter and easier to move around. There's a few other reasons that are a bit dated now, but saving weight is the main reason these days. A bit like asking your partner to marry you at gunpoint, it has extremely strong springs for aggressive engagements, all 108 of them. However, it's not the freewheel to get if you want a drag-free drivetrain. The bash guard is single-sided but can be positioned for both left and right-footed riders. It's not the burliest, so I'll try my best not to hit it. I'm going to use aluminium crank bolts which don't match. Maybe the cute thief needs glasses. But to actually fit the cranks, I use this steel bolt so I can really crank them tight. Get it? Crank? Because they're cranks. Before I fit the chain, I'm actually going to grind the rim. All the dust will stick to it otherwise. Plus, I can spin the wheel in either direction without the cranks turning. I like to use a corded grinder as they're lighter, and I also keep the tyre on the rim as fitting it after grinding can put tur or waxy release agent onto the grind and ruin the brake's performance. I use a thin disc and apply light pressure. You're not wanting to cut into the rim, just brush it to add texture. Again, if you're new to Trials, this might seem really weird. Surely this ruins the rim, and aren't disc brakes better anyway? Well, okay, normally you'd be right, but Trials is weird, and we need our own little weird quirks that would suck on a normal bike. The issue with disc brakes is that by stopping the wheel at the centre, you still get some movement at the outer edge due to pad movement and spoke flex. It might not be much, but if a tyre knob squirming is noticeable, you'd better believe spoke flex is. Stopping the wheel at the rim makes the bike far more accurate. However, one issue with a rim brake is that they don't like dust or moisture, so to work in all conditions, adding a sharp texture gives the pad something to really bite into. And speaking of bite, a rim brake with a grind and harder polyurethane pads has way more bite than a disc brake, which gives a load of confidence, but at the cost of any modulation or quiet braking. Now my rim has had a good grinding, I'll fit the chain. The OG viewers will know what this is, a KMC K610. My all-time favourite, as it doesn't stretch anywhere near as much as other chains. Weirdly, this chain is a baggy fit when the one on the heavy Onza was so tight I could barely get it fitted. They both have the same chainstay length, and I'm even using the same rear sprocket, so I can only think the Tratek freewheel has slightly deeper teeth, which effectively reduce its circumference slightly. So I'm going to have to use a tensioner. This one in fact. This is a heatsink model. It's a leaf spring design and tucks nicely out the way so it's hard to hit and break. It's also pretty lightweight. How light? 50 grams. That's how light. It's fitted by sliding over the hub's axle and then being clamped between the hub and the frame. The leaf spring, which is actually just a hacksaw blade, gives a pretty decent tension to the chain. The whole thing is nicely hidden and pretty cool. It's a real shame they stopped making these. It's so smooth, I can barely even feel the chain going over the jockey wheel. Front brake! Another item stolen from the heavy Rex, the Hayes Dominion A2. I was actually really impressed with its power, so I'm hoping I can transfer that over to this new bike. This fork is a standard 160mm post mount, so I'll have to use an adapter for my 180mm rotor. Now, this perhaps isn't the best advert I've done for Hayes. Normally these brakes are the easiest things on the planet to get running rub-free, but either this mount needs faced or I've got a sticky piston. However, at this point, I'm going to ride the bike as is and see if it wears in or not. I'm going to skip tradition and do the foot pegs next. These are a pair of Echo cage pedals and they're extremely lightweight. A single pedal weighs only 120 grams, and a pair is 240, which I guess makes sense. However, being lightweight is perhaps their only strong point. The titanium axle, slim body and cage could snap at any moment, and despite looking aggressive, its bark is worse than its bite, and they're actually not very grippy at all. But on they go anyway. I'm on a mission here. Okay, so now I'm going to do the back brake. You may remember this lever from the heavy Rex build. I tried to fit this brake, but the hose ended up popping out of the lever when I pulled it too hard. Well, it's repaired itself and ready to go again. Only this time it has a hose splitter. I'm hoping this can give me a super clean hose routing and less chance of splitting it, as there's no crossover pipe to get hit or caught on things. Firstly, I have to route it through the frame. This splitter was one reason why I made such a big hole in the frame, as I didn't know whether it might need space to sit in the frame slightly. Now, I'm just going to use some standard Magura 4-bolt clamps. There are lighter options out there, but apparently no one told the cute thief. Oh yeah, I need pads. I mentioned earlier that polyurethane makes good pad material. Well, I like to make my own. This is some urethane I'm experimenting with, and I've put them into aluminium backings from TNN for extra stiffness. Okay, a confession. I hate hose splitters. I always seem to struggle to get them bled properly, and today was no exception. Plus, the hose routing actually worked pretty poorly. So I've ditched it and gone with a normal crossover. It bled perfectly first try, and the hoses actually sit closer to the frame. It feels really nice and should be pretty powerful with the 4-finger lever. I'm going to try the brake with and without booster and see which I prefer. Hopefully without, as I think that looks neater. It'll be interesting to compare the power with the other bike with the mount under the stays. I do have a feeling I'll not get on with this one as much, as it won't have as much hold, i.e. backwards power, just due to how these brakes work. As for the internal routing, it was pretty pain-free, as having such a big hole made threading the hose through pretty easy. And I love how neat it looks too. The finishing touch will be these charged grips. They're thin and light, so perfect for the job. To make push-on grips stick, I go against the grain and use GT85. I know I'll get suggestions on what I should use, but honestly, this stuff works better than it has any right to. You have to be careful, as grips can stick quicker than the time it takes to push them on sometimes. Okay, well, they're on, but they're a little bit uglier than I expected. I might change these later. But in the meantime, it's time to get things tight and give it away. No, not give it away. I mean, let's see how heavy this thing's ended up. Place your bets. Well, shiver me timbers, 8.9 kilos. That's actually a lot lighter than I expected, and actually one of the lightest bikes I've ever built. And that's with a tank of a frame and steel bolts. The previous bike was 11.5 kilos, and believe me, the difference is extremely noticeable. But what do you think? I think it looks cool, especially in the right light. But I just want to know how it rides with 3 kilos saved. Let's head outside where the snow has now melted. Well, straight away, the weight saved on the rear wheel makes a dramatic difference on how easy it is to pivot. And because I saved a ton of weight on the front end with the carbon fork, rim and lighter tyre, picking up the front wheel feels like half the effort of my last bike. Despite the freewheel having 108 engagement points, I do sometimes find dead space with my pedals, as I'm used to my Intri 9 hubs with over 600. It will only take a short ride to get used to that though. The bike is decent on the rear wheel, but not as good as a modern higher bottom bracket frame. However, I still find the low BB really nice for my older style of riding. The rear brake pads have a rough texture as I cut them with a saw, so the brake doesn't have loads of bite until they wear in. I just hope the backwards hold power is decent, as that's always been my biggest complaint with hydraulic rim brakes. My prototype frame was definitely an improvement with the reversed mounts. But overall, the bike feels really nice. The weight saving is very noticeable and it feels extremely stiff, though maybe a little harsh due to the stiff fork and high pressure needed in the front tyre. So there we go. I can almost guarantee this is the lightest ever Onza T-Rex, but is it too light? I got a lot of comments concerned with how much I removed from the chainstay yoke, so I'll keep an eye on them and see how they hold up. I will say the rear end has a lot of support from the extra thick tubes and beams, so there's actually hardly any flex happening. Plus, the yoke is very thick, so I'm not overly concerned just yet. Oh, and I almost forgot about the seat. I still have the option to run this, and I modified it to save some weight. I obviously drilled the post and seat, but I also swapped the pivotal bolt to aluminium and removed a chunk of material from the base plate. This does add 267 grams to the bike, which isn't ideal, but I kinda do like it. And because I modified the base plate, it doesn't foul with my hose routing either. It'll divide opinions, but seat or no seat? Let me know in the comments. At this point, the cute thief came to see how the finished bike looked. Well, he might not be impressed, but I think it's cool. I'll give it a proper ride when the weather allows and see how I get on. I feel I may end up making it heavier though. Light doesn't always mean good, and grippier pedals, a bigger front rotor, and maybe even a heavy tri-oil front tyre from the last build might actually make it ride better. But I'll cross those bridges later. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this build though. I'll get it ridden ASAP, and I hope you can come and watch that video too. I have a special video out midday Christmas Day, but if you can't join me then, I hope you have a great one. Thanks so much for watching. See you later.